I know I'm not the one you want to see, but I'm excited. All right. So wow, we've been quite a year so far, haven't we? Awesome people coming to talk to you guys, and I wonder why that is, all right? It's because the word is out, okay? The word is out that this is the place to come because we've got the rising stars of tomorrow right here. So, without any further ado, I want to introduce to you somebody who you already know, who is going to do the formal introductions, and that is Harper Jones. Come on out.
Good afternoon, Booker T. I'm so excited because today we have a phenomenal cast of the upcoming film Bohemian Rhapsody. So, Bohemian Rhapsody is a biopic that tells the true story about the legendary band Queen, who broke boundaries and created amazing songs such as We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, Somebody to Love, and of course, Bohemian Rhapsody. So, here is our panel. Give them a round of applause. So first up, we have our student interviewers, Mr. Kobe Williams. From the Theater Conservatory, his focus has been acting and physical theater. He has performed in many Booker T productions such as The Crucible, The Liar, and Blues to Mr. Charlie. With BCW's Notorious Minds Group, he performed in The Island, The Journey, and Drinks. Currently, he is a part of the school's production of Death and the King's Horseman. Next up, we have the wonderful, amazing, and outstanding Madeline Weed. As you guys know, Maddie is a senior in the Theater Conservatory whose focus is in stage management. She has managed the all-school musical In the Heights and a chorus line along with such amazing shows such as Trojan Women. She has had the privilege of being our student council president. Now please give them one more round of applause. Alright, so what other songs of Queen do you guys know?
Somebody loves that bottom girl. Tricycle.
Alright, what other songs? Give me one song. Bicycle race! Yeah! Did you guys see one of the songs for me? Did you guys see one of the songs for me?
Oh, we want to hear them sing it.
But we are young and hot and dirty in the street, gonna take on the world someday. You got blood on your face, big disgrace, waving your banner all over the place. We will rock it. Come on, we will rock it.
Hello, everybody. All right, that was great. Thank you very much. Thank you. What a warm welcome. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for taking time out of your very busy schedules to spend a little time with us. Sorry for saving you from that math assignment.
So we just wanted to first say thank you so much for being here. As you can tell, we're all really excited.
We are very excited to be here as well. We were just doing an interview and talking about our favorite part of going across the country, talking about this film, and it's events like these that we love the most.
So one of the first questions that we have for you guys is, clearly Queen is well known by everyone. So when you were given these characters to portray, what did you find was easiest first? Did you find the physicality and then the vocality came next? What was your process?
Do you guys know Queen really well together? That's a good thing. Both well. Both well.
I suppose there's so many answers are already there for you because everybody has seen the concerts, everyone has seen them in interview. They know the crazy hairstyles and the outrageous costumes. So a lot of those decisions are made for you, and so we just try and study as much of that kind of stuff as we can. So YouTube is a pretty great resource. There's no limit to how much material is out there. I think we've probably seen every interview the members of Queen have ever done. But then the challenge then as an actor is to like get all of the exterior things, like the physicality, the voice, the gestures, all that kind of stuff, and then try and think about how that affects like the inside, the internal things. It's probably the opposite way around of how you usually approach a character or a project.
Very nice.
I don't know if any of it was easy, really. You know what I mean? I mean, there are ways in, I guess. You know, especially like, you know, you got to do these accents that are pretty unusual. You know, so I'm from New York. You know, it's this like Eastern Midlands English accent that I've never heard before, and I think only John Deacon has. And so you try to find little catchwords that kind of get you into it, something that can sort of, you say that word and it kind of brings you into his voice or like his world.
What was your catchword?
It's just okay. Just that alone, and then like every morning we would get ready, we would get made up in the hair and the whole thing, go back into my trailer and just watch like a 10-minute interview with John Deacon, just to everyday refresh, every day to get myself started in that voice so that, you know, it would carry me throughout, you know, the day and then through the entire shoot.
I grew up about 40 miles away from where John Deacon comes from, and I've never heard an accent like that in my entire life. It's so unique, it's so weird.
And I wouldn't even listen to the other interviews with the other guys, just because I wanted to make sure I stayed focused just on him. I didn't want to be influenced by sort of the other accents. And that was another challenge where you just had to really put blinders on and just focus yourself on just the details of like your individual character.
You never listened to us.
No, I don't even know.
It's a great acting lesson for everyone out there. Don't listen to your.
I thought John Dick was a solo act. I didn't even know that he had okay.
Well, a lot of people don't know this about Freddie Mercury, but he wasn't born in London. He was born in Zanzibar in Africa. He went to school in India. So his mom even has a very unique accent. So before I even started listening to Freddie, I started listening to his mother, because Freddie has a very unusual way of speaking. So I gleaned a lot from just listening to her. And as far as other aspects, the costumes, we would do costume fittings for this. I must have had about 50 different outfits in this film. And every time I got to a costume fitting, I would say, you know what, this is rehearsal time. So I would ask for hair and makeup going in, and then I'd posture about as Freddie would, and say, oh no, something like that. And, I prefer the white satin pants over the black satin pants, and where's my cup of tea? I want a cup of tea right now. And I would do the accent, but I'll save it for the movie. The other thing I got to do was call everyone darling and dear every day. So that's quite fun, ending every sentence with darling and dear. But it was like going back to theater school, because 1 hour you're taking piano lessons, then you're working with a dialect coach, and then working with a movement coach rather than a choreographer, because I wanted to be able to do anything on stage with absolute spontaneity. I didn't want to be confined to copying him or imitating him move for move. If a song played, I wanted to be able to move as much like him as I could, but have it come straight from the soul, straight from the gut. And that's definitely infected the way I dance in public now. There's no suppressing my inner Freddie.
Now, y'all got to recreate the huge performance at Wembley Stadium in 1985. What was that like?
The first thing we did. Yeah, luckily they brought us out to London 6 weeks early so we could have, literally band rehearsals. And that was the first time I met Will and met Ben. Rami and I had known each other for a long time. But to get the four of us together was sort of the first step, to sort of try to feel like a band. And again, we had this movement coach, Polly Bennett, and she would have us do like exercises, like you would do like in theater school, whatever, and touching and all these sort of things. And it seemed maybe like a little hokey or something at first, but once we got to the stage, which was recreated to scale, and we had to do this in front of 500 people and had to do a 20-minute set, literally the first shot we did in the entire movie was walking out on that stage, and we were immediately like, no, touch him, we gotta do all things. Because it's just suddenly like, you realize all that rehearsal and all that training is so, vitally important. And it was great. I mean, they gave us all the resources, right? Like I was taking bass lessons 4 days a week for 6 weeks in a row, for 4 days a week. Same with these guys, and we really wanted to make sure that first performance was like perfect. So we would watch the video and make sure that even if the smallest things, like if John turns his head to the left at one moment, I'd be doing it at that moment, that exact moment. So that and learning the songs, and then also having the characters connect, it's one of the last things in the film. But to be actually making sure the acting moments were there as well, it was a really full-on way to start. It was really sort of out-of-body experience for us, I think.
But after that moment, we kind of had a physical language that we could refer back to, so that when we were doing the later concerts in the shoot, we knew the kind of physical relationship between the four of us. And often, when we were studying that Live Aid footage, we'd see these moves that looked like quite aesthetic moves. I remember there's one where Brian walks backwards like a flamenco, lifting his knees up really high. It's really weird. It looks quite cool. And there's moments where Freddie's kind of flicking his leg over like this, which looks like a dance move. But what we realised when we studied it closer is they're actually stepping over cables on the stage. So it was just a purely functional.
Wireless. Nothing was wireless then.
Yeah. And so a lot of the aesthetic comes from something very, very practical. Equally, when you see them moving up towards the drums, it's not an aesthetic thing. It's just so they can literally hear the drums at that moment because it's a difficult moment to keep time. And when you start to relate things like that, it meant that when we got to later concerts, we had a much more of a free flow with it. We would just kind of improvise in those later concerts, actually.
What was cool about Live Aid, if you guys don't know, some people consider it one of the greatest rock performances of all time. It has almost 1 billion views on YouTube. And I think half of those are us trying. And on day one, we had to start with that, which is, you start to curse your producers and directors saying, but why? Why did they choose this to start with? But, it was a challenge we accepted, and we started out on day one. We came out as a band. We did Bohemian Rhapsody. The next day, we did Radio Gaga. We did this song called Hammer to Fall after that. Crazy Little Thing Called Love, and then We Are the Champions. And we'll rock call. And the Deos. And the Deos. I will include those in it. Thank you, Joe.
Just let you get away with anything.
You're free. So, where was it? The last day we were on the Live Aid stage, we got to do the entire 20-minute concert all the way through. And there were moments which were beautiful because you could feel the day-to-day, we were doing really great work, I thought, but something was missing. And you needed that adrenaline from song to song for, each one would carry into the next one until it almost was its small movie. I think that's why that concert plays so well, is because it is like this, 20-minute film. And there's a start to it, there's a climax to it, there's this gorgeous ending. And the adrenaline you have as an actor sometimes, it's hard to keep your heart from pounding so hard and your knees from knocking as it is as an actor. And then when you combine the rock star element, you kind of start to have trouble even catching your breath. It's a really, really euphoric feeling that allows you to do things you couldn't quite ever think you can. And I guess that's the closest we could ever come to having a rock star moment. But completing that iconic concert over the first week gave us this feeling that, okay, we did something pretty radical here, and there's nothing in this movie that we won't be able to take on.
So my question is basically, how do you all go about portraying the more private moments of the band? Like, I guess you can watch the videos of the performances and sort of recreate that, but how do you portray the companionship between the members? Or how do you go about preparing for that?
That's a good question. I mean, so much of the material that we were looking at on YouTube and what have you is the band members presenting a very public side of themselves, speaking to journalists or speaking to an audience, which you're always trying to present the best side of yourself. There's an agenda in that moment, and so we try and seek out interviews and things where they didn't realise the camera was rolling or the microphone was on, and you hear them caught off guard. Or if they're in a recording studio and you hear some outtakes of them having an argument, that was always very revealing. But also, we had, for my part, I had Brian May, the guy I was playing, on set quite a lot of the time. And he was very generous with his time and with his, just with his spirit, basically, the opportunity to be able to sit in a room with him and kind of be an equal and open up and just speak to each other as two human beings and just absorb something of his character and his personality was kind of the best research source that you can ever have, really. It's different for you guys, I imagine.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, because, John's still alive, but he lives a very private life. After Freddie's death, that was it for him with Queen. I think it's a little bittersweet for him to think about it, because it brings back a lot of that sadness as well. So he has taken a step away. So he wasn't on set, unfortunately. But you, as an actor, you even take something from that, right? That he was so affected by Freddie's death that he wants to be private, that he doesn't want the limelight. That speaks to who he is almost as much as him being there. And so I tried to take something even from that and bring it to the character. I was lucky enough to meet his son. We just got lunch one time, and he's 24, so he wasn't really, he doesn't have any memories of Queen itself, but I just saw the same sort of man that I had been watching on all these videos, right? His humor and his intellect, his thoughtfulness. And I felt like I was getting a piece of John from that sort of as well. And then I think when it's also about things that happen between the band, I think we got lucky that, the 4 band members, we really got along from day one. And it was rare how well we got along. We went on vacation together after we were done shooting. It was like that kind of thing. So we got very close, and that helps you on set too, because we were allowed to ad-lib a lot of things. Half our lines in the movie are things that we just came up with on the day. And so that was a really fun exercise as well, that was, also brought us closer, and we knew our characters so well, and we sort of knew how they would react to each other and play off those things. It was a fun time on set to be able to do that, and I think you see the chemistry between us in those moments.
That's great. I had this a really tough time in the beginning because I looked, growing up, Freddie Mercury was talked about as, and still is, one of the greatest performers of all time. He has a voice like no one's ever heard. And so, and what he does on stage is purely his own. It's actually one person you go, no one's gonna copy that. No one can copy that. And then here I am going, well, I have to try to make that happen again. It's probably a bad idea on my part. But I started to look at this kind of deity, this rock god, and I had to say, I gotta bring him down somehow as an actor. I can't, if I keep thinking of him as, godlike, I'm screwed. So I thought, okay, let's just do it the way we do everything else when you go approach an actor. Think about his childhood. Look at his childhood. I talked about where he was born earlier. I mean, he didn't even make it to London until later on in his life. The kid was an immigrant with very humble beginnings, starting a life for himself in London, working at an airport, writing songs, trying to live his dream. And he meets this band who he's been chasing at every concert they're playing. He's just watching until he comes up to them and says, listen, you guys are just missing one little thing, and that's me. And he had this power to do things like that, despite still being really conflicted inside about himself, his identity, sexuality, and yet he still could pull together, harness some confidence to challenge himself, to take this band on. And then that's when I started to discover where all this power comes from on stage. It comes from all of that passion and all of that conflict inside of him, just yearning to exist outside in a place where he can share it with everybody like you. And so finding people who would accept him and understand him and he could collaborate with in a band made it easy to understand why they had the chemistry that they did.
It also comes a point, I think, no matter how much research you've done, how many interviews you've watched, whatever it might be, comes a point where you just got to, as an actor, make a choice and commit to it, and be present with your other scene partners, and just kind of remember a sense of playfulness, which is at the essence of any scene or any performance, I think.
At what point did y'all find an affirmation that I'm doing this and I'm doing it the right way? Was there a moment that you can recall that you were you stood in the mirror and said, I think I can do it, this is right?
I think when you've got Brian May watching you doing a take, and you can see him in the crowd waving his arms in the air, taking photos and clapping and singing along to his own songs. A bit weird, but that is quite a good affirmation, I think, yeah.
I don't know. For me, and I don't know, we might share this. I don't know, but like you think you know. Well, contradict me in 2 seconds. But I feel like you always walk away and you replay it. You know, you're done with the scene and you want it to be perfect, and you always want like one more take. And sometimes like the time constraints, you just can't get that or whatever it is. But you sort of like, you know, go over it a lot in your mind. It's a little bit weird. Like you'll always sort of see actors in the corner, just like going like, and then it's like, do you want a coffee? Oh yeah, no, yeah, sure. Like, and it seems like we're insane, but it's just like you're sort of going over the scene over and over again. And all you can really do is do your homework, prepare as much as humanly possible, especially when you're playing a real person. That adds a whole other layer of pressure and responsibility that you always feel. You feel it to the man himself, you feel it to his family, you feel it to the Queen family. And all of those things keep you just hyper-focused and wanting to do just the best job you can. And then at some time, you know, eventually it's showtime, folks, right? Like, and you just have to go out there and give it everything you have, and not hold back, and not be self-conscious, and not second-guess, and just do it. And then you walk away and you hope that when you see the movie on the big screen, you say, yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I wanted to do. It's probably not till that moment that you can really be sure.
Oh, man. You know, people are always like, oh, when you looked in the mirror and you saw Freddie staring back at you, how did that feel? I never saw Freddie staring back at me. But I knew that it was just small steps every day, collectively. Every small step we took, we were going to be able to tell this story. And, you know, I just hope that it would, I hope that it would be fulfilling not only to the band, but to the fans. But the only way to approach it was to go every day, just look at it as a small step and a game. And what was really helpful is thinking outside of yourself. Like I could easily have said, okay, this is all on me. Freddie Mercury is all on me. And, you know, thank God it wasn't. We collectively did this as a group and as not only a cast, but an entire crew. But there's no way I would have gone through this process without leaning on the other actors, especially these guys. You know, when you have something that seems like an insurmountable task, but you got, you know, some of your best friends now holding you up and kind of just reassuring you, we can do this together, every step, every day, one step at a time. It's a really special feeling, and I think I really had to look at everybody else on set every day and say, man, that makeup artist is doing her absolute best to make me feel and look like Freddie Mercury. You know, my band members are surrounding me with so much just respect and help, for lack of a better word, and being so emotionally supportive throughout all of it. That costume designer has worked for hours to put together 50 costumes just for me. Get out of here. This production designer has recreated the set of Wembley for us to share with everybody else. And that's when you start to go, oh, it's not me playing Freddie Mercury. I'm just part of a smaller thing that's part of a smaller thing that happens to be a tiny part of this legacy of one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time. And that's the just perspective you need to give yourself, I think, to get out of yourself and say, it's not about me. It's about so much more than me.
So, especially initially after the first trailer and everything came out, there was a lot of talk about not really revealing a lot of the details, especially with Freddie Mercury's life, or straight-washing him and stuff like that. Like, how do you respond, and what would you say now, especially after everything that has gone down that you may have learned since then about the movie to respond to comments like that?
I mean, it's pretty simple for me after filming this, after we all filmed this, to know the story that we wanted to tell. I mean, this man and this band is it's a celebration of what it means to be exactly who you want to be and share that with everybody in an audience who wants the same thing, I think. And what he could do as a human being was extraordinary. The way he could hold an audience in the palm of his hand and still have so much conflict going on inside of him is a marvel of what human beings can do. So when you want to respect that and celebrate that, I think it is important to go into his private life and aspects of things that were difficult for him, his relationships, his promiscuity sexually, and of course, I think the film really deals with his battle with AIDS in a very thoughtful, elegant, and classy way. But when you start to really encourage presenting this illicit, kind of gratuitous, wild, salacious part of his life, you begin to diminish what made this human being so great. I don't think we ever wanted to tell a story where we start to question our feelings about Freddie Mercury. I can tell you, there's no reason to do that. What you want to do is question why and how he and this band made people feel like they belonged, like everyone was special for a reason, and had this intrinsic bond between what was happening on stage and watching them in the audience. What happens when you listen to Bohemian Rhapsody, and why it sends a flood of emotions and feelings through you when you hear that song. Why we all sat here before we came out and chanted in unison, "We will rock you." Why we all can sing together, "We are the champions." Those are the things you want to celebrate. Those are the things that we need right now. And I'm glad that that's what our movie is all about.
Hello, my name is Damian Charles, and I'm in the 8th grade. And I just want to know, since you guys, in this movie, and you guys are professionals now, did you have to work on your acting every single second, every single minute? Are you always working? Are you always doing?
Always working, always hustling.
Yeah,
That's for real.
So, but it depends on what you mean. Do you mean are we always on? Are we always sort of acting in our private lives? Or?
Are you always working on your craft? When you're not doing the movies, are you always working on your craft?
I hope we're not always acting, because that would be pretty terrifying. But it's true to say though, as an actor, you're always looking, you're always observing, you're always trying to look at human behavior and look at human interactions, you observe the way people move. It's a fact of being an artist. We talked about this. The fact of being an artist is you don't stop, because it's a way of seeing the world, I think. But I certainly hope that I'm not always acting. I think people around me probably find me quite unbearable.
And also, some jobs are tough, where they take a lot out of you, and when they're done, sometimes you need to just let go of it and kind of relax your mind and do something else, and do something the complete opposite of acting, just to kind of come down from that. And I don't know, I think everyone sort of has certainly everyone has their own process. But for me, it reaches a point where I come down from a job and I just want to veg out or do something else, and then that creative part of me starts sneaking up, and I miss it, and I want something else, and it and it snowballs until it takes over. I'm like, man, I really just want to like be on another set or doing something creative. You know, I don't know, kind of ebbs and flows like that.
I think as well, acting isn't just about like, you know, your voice, your body, or whatever it might be. It's about bringing life experience to the characters that you're approaching, and so it's about everything else. Actually, that's just far more interesting. Traveling the world and meeting new people and having new experiences and going to art galleries, going to concerts, and just having a very rich context and to draw from when it comes to approaching these characters, and just being prepared in that way, I suppose.
And also, just to add to that, I would say that, you know, the one thing as I've got older, and we were just talking about this in another interview, is having a life outside of acting. Right? It's for a lot of people, it's going to be the be all end all, and that's the dream. And getting there, it's going to be a really daunting ride. But and it's nice to have that laser focus. But living your life, enjoying everything else, your family, your friends, you know, not losing sight of those things. Those things will always be there. Acting will not necessarily always be there.
To talk a little bit about Booker T. Washington High School Performing and Visual Arts, but I want Maddie and Kobe to each take 30 seconds to tell our guests about our school and what makes our school special. So,
we just took 20 minutes. They only get 30 seconds.
So, Booker T, if you look into this audience, as you can see, each member in this team is completely different from the rest. But we all have one thing in common, and that's we love the art, and we want to pursue it. And we're like a family here, and we have this special thing where we get to come together and share our story and share our background and say, we're gonna get each other to the end. We're gonna make it happen.
I don't know how to follow up the president, but I think what makes Booker T. Washington so special is that, okay, when I look out into this crowd, I've never really been in front of a crowd this big, and it's so wild to think that every single person was so very talented to audition and make it. Because I heard, back when I auditioned and got in, I heard that there are always 10 people waiting in line for the spot you have. And the fact that so many people were able to claim that spot and, I guess, show what they got is awesome to me, yeah.
We are Booker T. We wish you all the best.